with you here today. Especially thank you. That's the first time I've ever been introduced by Pharrell Williams with the music. So thank you for organising that. My kids will love it. But look, it's a genuinely great privilege to address this incredibly distinguished audience for the first time, in fact, since I became Chancellor 2.5 years ago. So let me take this opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for all your support, your advice, your challenge. The country isn't going to become wealthy and prosperous solely because of the things that I do. Change doesn't happen behind a desk in Whitehall, not even the Chancellor's desk. It comes from all of you. When your businesses invest, things get built. When you train someone, they excel. When you invent new products and services that people want to buy, you change the world. That insight is at the centre of my economic outlook. Now, I know there are sometimes frustrations and frictions. We won't always completely agree or go as far as you would like. But you must never, ever doubt that I and the government are on your side. You asked for more generous capital allowances, so we introduced the biggest two-year business tax cut in modern British history, the super deduction. You asked for more flexibility over apprenticeships, and we're delivering with lots of improvements, including new flexible training models. You asked us to cut business rates, and we're providing a discount of 50% for shops, restaurants, gyms, any business in retail, hospitality, and leisure. Of course, there's more to do. But I do want to take this moment to celebrate the partnership between this government and all of you. This is very personal for me. So I remember my very early days as Chancellor. Curran described himself as a crisis president. Well, that certainly I've had to be the crisis Chancellor. But sitting at my desk at the Treasury in those first few days and weeks, reading those daily COVID case numbers by the light of my desk lamp. And I was feeling an almost overwhelming sense of responsibility. And it was a privilege and a relief to be able to call people like Carolyn and Rain at the CBI for advice. Just as it is a privilege and a relief now to be able to call on Tony. Tony, under yours and Curran's leadership, the CBI continues to be what it has always been, a vital role and voice in our public life. So please, everyone, join me in thanking them for their extraordinary contribution and leadership. And rarely has your leadership been needed more than now. I hardly need to tell this audience that the economic situation is extremely serious. A perfect storm of global supply shocks is rolling through our economy simultaneously. Global demand shifting last year from services to goods and exacerbating supply chain bottlenecks. Russia's invasion of Ukraine causing energy and commodity prices to spike severely. And now a fresh wave of lockdowns in China, disrupting industrial production and adding to widespread backlogs in freight and in shipping. Now, while these are global forces, they are hitting families and businesses here at home. Just this morning's figures show that in April, CPI inflation was 9%. The Bank of England now expect inflation to peak at 10% later this year. And those inflationary pressures are starting to weigh on growth. But let me set out the way through this. Let me tell you the plan. A plan to help people with the cost of living and a plan for growth. So first, our plan to help with the cost of living. It is the Bank of England's role to control inflation, and they are rightly independent. Over the quarter century, since we took monetary policy out of the hands of politicians, inflation has averaged precisely 2%. And I know the governor and his team are completely focused on getting inflation back to target. Now, our role in government is to help cut costs for families. I cannot pretend that this will be easy. As I told the House of Commons yesterday, there is no measure that any government could take, no law we could pass that can make these global forces disappear overnight. The next few months will be tough. But where we can act, we will. We are providing £22 billion of direct support, with fuel duty cut by 5p a litre, council tax cut by £150, the warm homes discount increased to £150. We're making work pay by increasing the national living wage and cutting the universal credit taper rate. And in just a few weeks' time, we'll increase the national insurance threshold to £12,500, a £6 billion tax cut for 30 million working people. Because tackling high inflation is not just an economic necessity, it is a social and moral necessity. Those who suffer most are not the wealthiest who can find ways to protect themselves. It is always the poor. Our policy to date has focused on supporting people in work, and I make no apology for that. There is nobility in work. It is the best way out of poverty. And I'm proud that under this government, it always pays to work. But right now, we also have a collective responsibility to help the most vulnerable in our society. And so, as the situation evolves, our response will evolve. I have always been clear, we stand ready to do more. At the same time, we need to be careful. As Tony rightly warned us this week, at a time of severe supply restrictions, an unconstrained fiscal stimulus does risk making the problem worse. By pushing up prices still further, embedding high inflation expectations, and creating a vicious cycle of even higher interest rates and more pain for tens of millions of mortgage holders and small businesses. So even as we protect people from the worst of the crisis, we must continue to be responsible with the public finances and get borrowing sustainably under control and debt falling again. So, our plan will deal with the immediate impact of inflation, cutting costs for families, cutting the deficit. But we are also growing the economy. Over the long term, higher productivity is the only way to raise living standards. So to do that, we will build on our enduring strengths. In the UK, our children are some of the best educated in the world. Our incredible universities, as we heard, produce the third highest number of publications worldwide, and we have the second most Nobel laureates of any nation. Our artists, musicians, game designers, and filmmakers are creating work that is defining our era. Our economy has decarbonized quicker than anyone else over the last 20 years. Our deep and liquid capital markets finance the world's commerce. Our startups attract more venture capital than France and Germany combined. Our language is the international language of business. Our agile and flexible regulation is a model for others. I could go on and on. But we also do need to be honest. We also need to overcome our long-standing weaknesses in investment, skills, and innovation. Even in the decade before the global financial crisis, capital investment had weakened. Research from the Resolution Foundation and the LSE shows that lower capital per hour worked explains around half our productivity gap with France and Germany. On skills, our school and university performance has improved dramatically. But 4 in 5 of our 2030 workforce are already in work. So if we want to raise productivity in this country, we need to do more to support those already in work. And since the financial crisis, the rate of increase in innovation has slowed considerably, a weakness that explains almost our entire productivity gap with the United States. So why is this happening? The problem, I don't believe, is any longer what the government is doing. Public sector net investment is now reaching its highest sustained level since the 1970s. Yet capital investment by UK businesses as a percentage of GDP is a lot lower than the OECD average. Government funding for post-16 education is increasing. The Prime Minister has announced a lifelong learning entitlement alongside a plethora of new skills interventions like skills boot camps and T-levels. But UK employers and businesses spend just half the European average training their employees. And over this Parliament, we in government are delivering our pledge to increase public investment in research and development by 50% to £22 billion, making us one of the largest investors in R&D. But business investment in R&D as a percentage of GDP is again less than half the OECD average. So in other words, further government action can only take us so far. We need you, the wealth creators, the entrepreneurs, the leaders. We need you to invest more, train more, and innovate more. And as I've said previously, our firm plan is to reduce and reform your taxes to support you to do all three of those things. That is the path to higher productivity, higher living standards, and a more prosperous and secure future. And in conclusion, one of the biggest debates in economics right now is about whether the world is facing a great slowing down. Will we ever again see the kind of transformation that came from the introduction of railways to transport people and goods and ideas, cable and pylons to carry electricity into factories and homes, machines that freed people from backbreaking labour? Now, it's easy to look at the challenges we face now and feel disheartened. But I am not. I believe our most exciting companies are still to be founded. Our most talented people are still to be taught. Our best ideas are still to be discovered. Our best days lie ahead. Government alone cannot get us there. It will take all of us working together. But we can get there. So let's get to work. Thank you. Thanks very much.
I don't get Pharrell Williams, it appears. Good evening, everybody. I'm Tony Danker, the Director General, and I'm just stepping in now to do a thank you for the Chancellor. The Chancellor has to leave now. He has to fly to Germany to see G7 finance ministers, as if he